Hey everybody, welcome to the Wild Ginger Running YouTube channel, live broadcast and podcast. Today we have Tim, woo, and we are covering how to recover right from trail and ultra running with the lovely, loquacious, I don't even know what that means, Lavardeo-loving coach and physio Tim Pigott from HP3 Coaching. How are you doing today? Fresh from Lavardeo.
Your intros get more bonkers as we go on.
Yeah, I just need to keep you interested, Tim. That's why you keep coming back.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, recovering not too badly actually, considering. So yeah.
Cool. So you're still alive with us today, so that is good.
Yes.
We're going to grill you on how Lavardeo went in just a moment, and also your recovery. It's a very appropriate chat for you today, Tim, having just run 120k or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But before we start, just do a shout out to the sponsors of the episode. It's NAC Sports Nutrition. For the whole year, they make energy bars, they make waffles, energy and recovery powders, and real food purees and pouches. And today I've just got a code. I'm going to order some of their new energy gels to use in my next race. So I'm looking forward to testing those out. And recovery-wise, NAC have this really delicious, not too sweet vanilla protein powder, which you can also bake into cookies and cakes. So if you want to try that, then use code WildGingerRunning for 15% off at uk.nac.com. So recovery, a very appropriate chat for you, Tim, having just run the Lavardeo. Tell us all, because you haven't put a post on your Instagram yet. I was stalking you earlier, but there's nothing there to tell us how it went. How did the race go? And then we'll cover how you'll be recovering.
And how I'm recovering, yeah. Yes, I know I do need to put something up. Busy day yesterday. Brain wasn't fully functional yesterday, but I'm getting back there now.
We don't mind having the exclusive report.
There you go. So exclusive report for Wild Ginger Runner listeners. Was it good? I think it's one of those where the more that time passes, the more I can reflect and say that it was a good race. Yeah. I went out there with a sort of specific goals of, well, the first goal is always just to finish these things, isn't it? And finish in one piece and not in the medical tent. And I went out there last year. I raced it last year, but I didn't have a good performance last year, and I ran just over 17 hours. So it was a case of, we'll just make sure you do better than last year. That's obviously goal number 2. But I felt I was capable of a low 16 hours. And if I had a really good day, a stretch goal was going to be something into the 15 hours. And I started off well. But then it's the same issue that I had last year. As soon as we went up into the kind of altitude, I just, suffered.
Couldn't breathe.
Breathing was actually okay this year. So I've done a lot of work with my respiratory team and speech and language therapist, trying to work on my breathing and everything else. So I've had a much better year in terms of not having asthma flare-ups. I did have a flare-up just before the race, but managed to settle it and was okay. So no, breathing was all right, but I then suffered with nausea.
From the altitude.
With the altitude. So then was struggling to fuel because of the nausea. So then ended up in a little bit of sort of calorie deficit. Pulled it back and got back onto a good time. But then again, going up over the higher passes, the altitude getting to me again, and then that sort of slowed down. And the areas that I really struggled with last year, I got right, and I was good. So I'm happy with how I performed in those aspects. But it was still slower than I wanted. So then we're slowing right down, and it was looking like I was going to be finishing in about 17 hours 15, maybe even a little bit longer than that. But then I just absolutely smashed that final descent. I managed to finish in sort of 16:52, I think was the finishing time. So, managed to put it back, managed to run a PB.
Fantastic.
I suppose I beat my ranking position in terms of overall finishing position. Not that really means a huge amount. So, it was good in that sense, but I didn't do what I thought I was capable of. So maybe it's just that Lavardeo has other ideas of what I'm capable of.
Yeah. Well, we're all really proud of you, Tim. And what strikes me the most is how you learn from the previous times as well. It's like you go, all right, so you don't just curl up into a ball and go, oh no, that didn't go well. You're like, right, let's recover, let's analyse this, let's see what I need to work on. You make a beeline straight for it. You're like, right, I'm going to work on this, and this with military precision, and then something else comes up and you're still like, right, no, I'm still going to get under 17 hours, and you've just got that determination. So we're all really proud of you, aren't we, guys?
Yeah, and I obviously I go into it with ambitions of performances, it's only against myself, but performances. But I've got to acknowledge the fact that I shouldn't even be running. I'm lucky to even be doing this at all, or even alive. Exactly. So I did take a moment on the very last high point. I did stop and turn around and just took 30 seconds just to take in the views and just appreciate the fact that I was out there and doing it. And there's a lot of people.
The running gods.
Well, yeah, and we've got to be grateful for these opportunities, and to have a body that can actually still do these things and get out there and explore these amazing places, the mountains and everything. So no, I am grateful for that. And one day I won't be able to do it if I live long enough. So it's just appreciating these times when we can do it. But of course, there's still that competitiveness that wants to push a bit harder. So, yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. So do you reckon you'll be? Oh, and just for anybody that is joining Wild Ginger Running sort of for the first time and doesn't know the backstory of Tim Pigott, our amazing coach here, he was in a car accident. Someone drove into him on a blind summit, and basically he is bionic man now. And doctors said he would never walk again, and he was also in a coma for 2 weeks, and it was touch and go. So we did do an interview with Tim about that, and I'll link to it in the film description below. So that's what Tim's talking about when he is grateful. And yes, I was going to say, do you fancy Lavardeo a third time? Like, would you consider going out for, like, I don't know whether you can manage this with the kids and everything, but like if you went out for 2 weeks prior to acclimatise, would that sort that side of it out?
The immediate response to that is no. But of course, it's only a few days down the line and I'm already starting to go, I wonder. The way to manage it is obviously I've got to do something about the altitude. Living at virtually sea level with damaged lungs anyway. I've got scarring on the lungs from the accident, and obviously now struggling with asthma stuff. And I probably don't make as much blood as I should do because of the damage to my long bones. So these things will add up. There's things you can do to try and mitigate the altitude, and a lot of heat stress, which I did in training anyway. But the other thing is, do you get like an altitude tent so you can sleep in an altitude tent at home? And there's some evidence to suggest that can be beneficial from a performance point of view. There's some doubts around that. I did look into that for this one, but then ended up not getting a tent for a number of reasons. So yeah, if I was to do it, then I would need to look at the altitude more. But because of work, because of young family, and my wife working shifts, I can't go and spend prolonged period of time away at altitude. It's just not something that's feasible for me.
Besides the whole family relocating to Colorado or Chamonix or something.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen. So so it's just looking at yes, there's certainly with all these events that we do, no matter what level you're looking to try and compete or complete at, all of these events require some form of sacrifice. And it's just appreciating how much sacrifice can you make and are you willing to make. So yes, could I put things in place to result in a slightly better performance than I did this weekend? Yes. Am I willing and able to make those sacrifices? No. And therefore you need to be happy with what you can achieve with the resources that you have got. Yeah.
And what you're prepared to give.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's all very sage advice. And yeah, it's very sensible.
Yeah.
So,
And, with the best will in the world, Tom Evans had a late entry to the race. I am never going to be competitive against somebody like that, but I could be more competitive against myself. But again, it's just whether I can make the sacrifices required to be more competitive against myself. But again, it's all relative. And for some races, yes, I will sacrifice more, and for others, I won't. And that's just what you've got to balance out.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to have a clear plan and a team and a support team around you that agrees with you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So then recovery. How are you recovering? Personally, how are you doing anything differently for recovering from Lavardeo that you would usually, or are you doing your normal thing? And pray tell us, what is that?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to ultra marathons, there isn't a normal recovery because each event is so very different. Is it a flat race? Is it a mountain race? What other environmental stresses are you dealing with? How deep did you go in terms of damaging yourself? If we think about recovery after, something like the spine race, not necessarily the one I did, but, the full 268-mile spine race is going to be very, very different to a 50-mile race or even a 100-mile race. So every race is going to be slightly different in terms of what you need. So it's making sure that you listen to your body and give yourself that time. But I think the most important message is just don't start back too soon. Today, Tuesday, we're a few days down the line, and I'm feeling pretty good today. I jumped on the bike and I did a half an hour little spin this morning, and that's made my legs feel loads better. And I can run back up the stairs, I can run back down the stairs again. And like, oh, maybe I could go for a run. No, don't do that. Is making sure that you give yourself that extra time before you try and rush back to do anything. In physio world, there's a good saying that when an athlete says they're ready to return to training, make them wait another day.
Yeah, you said that about being ill as well. I remember you said the day you feel better and well enough to train, wait one more day. Yeah,
that's it. So yeah, just kind of give yourself time, give your body the time, but also give your mind the time to recover. Because of course these races, yes, they take a lot of physical training, but there's a lot of mental load, emotional load that goes into it as well. There's the investment in terms of the load on the family as well. The time away from doing the training and everything else. So having you've got to reinvest. You've got to earn your brownie points back again, as it were. So yeah, don't start back too soon. Give yourself that time to relax and reflect on the journey that you've been on. As part of that reflection, I mean that does actually almost start before the race as well. So something else I always get people to think about is before you go into these big races, is what is coming next. So that on the flight home, I was already starting to think about okay, so my next race is going to be, well, it's not until November, so I've got a lot of time. But what else is coming up next? So again, we've got weekend away with the family to look forward to, other bits and pieces. We've got a lot of birthdays this month and into August. So there's a lot of sort of family stuff going on. So there's other things to look forward to. Yeah, cakes to make, cakes to eat. Be very important, cakes to eat. We'll come on to that again in a minute. But again, after these big events, we can end up with that sort of post-race blues, the mental dips and lows that you can have after this because you've invested so much. And if it's gone well, great. If it hasn't gone well, again, that can trigger these sort of post-race blues. But having something else to look forward to, something else in the diary, and it doesn't have to be running related. Like I say, weekend away with the family, doing other bits and pieces, party this weekend, all these kind of things. Something else to look forward to is also really important. So giving your mind and your soul something else to then focus on and recover for. So I think that's important. And then it's dealing with the immediate aftermath of the race. Have you got any injuries? Have you got some blisters? Any rubbing, chafing? How are your tendons feeling? That type of thing. Did you pick up anything more significant injury-wise during the race? So therefore, do you need to get medical professional help? And obviously, the sooner you do that, the better that will be in terms of getting on a good recovery plan post-race. I thought I'd injured my knee mid-race. I had sort of sharp pains for some random reason. I had to stop and strap my knee up mid-race, which then allowed me to carry on running, which was fine because up until that point I couldn't. And now it's absolutely fine, and I can't find anything wrong with it.
Oh, that's
so
really
it
weird.
clearly wasn't a major injury mid-race. It was just my brain trying to stop me doing something. It was a sort of way to try and slow me down.
Yeah, or the altitude, expanding the pins in the knee or something.
Well, I've had the metalwork taken out of that knee, so there's no metal in that one anymore. But so I don't know what that was all about. But yeah, the brain does funny things in races. Brain does funny things anyway. So then once you dealt with that, the next thing is then just getting sort of good movement back again. We're often really stiff and sore, so introducing some gentle yoga, some gentle Pilates, easy movement, just going walking. Like I say, I got on the bike today. Legs, quads were feeling pretty stiff. Very, very easy spin on the bike, and legs feel good again.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like you go for a run, know that that's a bad idea. And it's about just giving yourself that time. So just going through some, I'll start introducing some more yoga, and I'll do some sort of Pilates routines just to reintroduce that good movement patterns, so that when you do start to then reintroduce running again, you're running with good movement patterns and not starting to limp or shuffle or get into some bad habits with that. So the next thing is, like I say, introducing that. That could be, again, maybe doing some foam roller work, some other stretching, mobility, self-massage techniques, all of these different things. So just kind of working through various body parts and addressing the common areas that might be stiff and sore, so that when you do start to reintroduce stuff, like I say, you're moving well. And then following that, the next thing I'd be doing is getting back in the gym, and probably getting back in the gym before looking to actually run again. So doing some light strength work, just making sure that your tendons are happy and that they've recovered. So it's low load. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be particularly challenging, but just getting back into that with some, low level strength work, and then gradually building that strength back up again, so that okay, so I can do those squats, lunges, deadlifts, step ups, whatever it is. If I can do those movement patterns and my body's okay, I know I'm going to be okay for the forces of the impact of running. So then that you're safe to return to running. So often people will, energy-wise, they're recovered. Muscles feel like they're okay. So they could try and go back to that running again. But actually the tendons haven't caught up yet. And you do a couple of runs and then suddenly, bang, that's where the injury comes in.
Yeah.
2-3 runs back, bang, that's where something goes wrong. And it's because you just didn't give that connective tissue the time needed to recover. And again, just give it that little bit of stimulus with maybe some strength work. So from there, and then, of course, we're endurance athletes. This is a, trail running show. People here like the endurance activities. So we want to get back to that because that's partly sort of who we are. But I think, again, it's just don't go too quick into that impact activity. So that's where, go walking, just go for a good long walk, active recovery walk, and just don't allow yourself to run a single step. We use the Shinrin Yoko, the kind of forest bathing. Just go out there and just have a nice walk through nature and just, again, this is a trail running show. We like being out there in nature. So just go for a walk in nature. You don't have to run and hammer it. Just get out there, enjoy being out in nature again. but at much lower intensity. Maybe it's getting on the bike, mountain bike, road bike, whatever, or just spinning. But yeah, just get that longer endurance, but without the impact. Or maybe it's going swimming. Is the weather improving enough for wild swim? Well, I'm sure there's people listening to this who do go wild swimming. Still a bit too cold for me, but yeah. But yeah, so maybe getting out there and doing a bit of swimming or something like that. So you can get your endurance hit, but without the impact coming in. Yeah.
And would you do that for like a week or 2 weeks, or does it just depend how you felt, how much you caned it at the ultra or trail event or whatever you were doing?
Absolutely, it will vary. I've done some races where, excuse me, sorry, it's been only a few days of just low intensity work. Sorry, yeah, lungs still recovering from pushing at altitude.
Demonstrating the recovery.
Absolutely. And then, other races where it's taken several weeks, a month or so. So it really depends on, the type of race, the type of damage. I think after the spine race, my feet were still swollen for, a good week or so before I could do anything like that. And it was probably more like sort of 4 weeks before I was back to doing anything which really resembled going for a run. The way I'm feeling today, I might be doing a 20-minute jog at the weekend. We'll see how it goes, but that's probably all it's going to be. And again, if you've got the access, then lower impact. So I have on my treadmill this thing called the lever device. So it's a frame with some elastic cords that go onto essentially some shorts, so you can reduce how much load is going through your feet. So you can kind of lift yourself up a little bit. People might have heard of things like the anti-gravity treadmill, the Alter G treadmills. Same idea. It just lifts you up and reduces the load,
like
so it can just get you back.
Like being in a baby bouncer a little bit.
It is a baby bouncer for grown-ups. Absolutely.
I love it.
It's absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic device, and it's, from a physio point of view, it's brilliant for getting people back to running in that sort of early return to running phase, where we can reduce the load going through the body, but still reproduce the running loads. Obviously, because of all my old trauma and injuries, there's a limited amount of volume that I can actually do running wise, but using that, I use that regularly throughout training, just for easy runs where I want to maybe take off some of the impact on my legs. So anyway, so that would be part of my return to running as well. So yeah, that will then sort of transition obviously into more and more impact as the weeks go by. But that might take you 1 week, it might take you 2, 3, 4. Really depends on how you're feeling and how the body is. So yeah, and then is what else do you need to do to look after your muscles? Do you want to book in some massages, post race massages? Can you just do that yourself? Foam roller, tennis balls, massage guns. All these tools are useful just to help your body feel better, move better, which will then help you transition back into training in a more fluid way, rather than carrying any stiffness or any soreness back into training again. So yeah,
I'm just wondering, it sounds like the recovery time varies obviously between depending on what you've personally done and how hard it was for you, so you have to listen to your body obviously. But I think one thing I've always struggled with is listening to my body, because I just genuinely don't know if I'm being lazy or if I really should rest. And like, for example, I did parkrun on Saturday. Like, it's nothing like Lavardeo, but I've had bronchitis for like 3 months, and I've just come back to doing a few just little 3-mile runs for the last couple of weeks. I've been like walking and running 3 miles or so. I did parkrun. And I wasn't expecting to, but I felt sort of like strong at parkrun. So I gave it a bit of welly, and I just did a steady effort, like a tempo effort throughout. And I got 29.5 minutes with buggy, with a 16 kilogram child inside. Post bronchitis, that's a good run for me. And but I also parked like a mile away from parkrun, so I sort of jogged that as well. So that was 5 miles done. And then I took Finley to Railworld in the afternoon. I pushed him in the buggy, so that was another 2 miles walk. So that was 7 miles in total on Saturday. And then I helped to make a bench on Sunday, because me and my husband are making a bench and a man from choir is teaching us how. So I was doing a load of like sanding the edges of this bench down with a big raspy thing. And I just felt absolutely battered on Monday and had to have a little sleep. And then today I ran with Finley in the buggy just 3.5 miles before nursery and work, because I've realised that now I've got a proper job with the BMC as well. I just can't fit everything in. But I felt really tired, like my legs felt tired, I felt tired. Like, is that me just not getting enough sleep maybe, or is it actually that park run took more out of me than I thought, or that day took more out of me than I thought post bronchitis? Because I'm just not used to that tiring me out, that kind of level of activity. That would have been like a normal day for me in the past.
That's it. So it's appreciating you've had quite a long period off because you were sick. So you've had a long period of detraining as well. So naturally your fitness has dropped. And therefore what was an easy activity prior to getting sick now isn't quite as easy as it used to be, because actually your fitness has dropped down. We refer to this as Dye's envelope of function. So you think about the kind of maybe you got a ceiling, a threshold, because you've done a lot of training, you've got a level of fitness, but then because you have this detraining effect, that ceiling comes down. So let's take if you were to jump off a 6-foot fence and land, and you had no physical training at all, jumping off a 6-foot fence, that might result in injury. But let's say you do a whole bunch of training, you get really strong bones, really good at doing lots of jumping. You could jump off a 6-foot fence and that wouldn't cause you an injury. But then you go and lie in bed for a month and don't do anything at all, jumping off that 6-foot fence is then going to result in injury again, isn't it? Think about running. If you did absolutely no running at all, and then you just try to turn up and run a marathon, it's gonna hurt. But if you do lots of training, you can get to the point where you can run a marathon and it's just a normal long training day. But then if you have a whole bunch of time off again, your fitness is going to come down. So to then try and run a marathon again, it's going to hurt again. And it's going to take time to get that fitness back up again. Now, the nice thing is it generally comes back quicker than the first time it took to get there in the first place.
Hopefully.
So, exactly. So it's just appreciating, if you do have that time off, that you've got to then just lower those expectations and let it all come back down again. So that's probably more what you're sort of feeling there. And then, it's just appreciating that actually, you've had these kind of training load, doing the run, home chores, DIY, etc. But that is just load on the body, and appreciating that what we call the allostatic, the whole body load, and the influence that has on you. I had a chat with one of my athletes the other week, and saying about how he was quite tired, and well, what have you been doing? Well, he's been chopping up wood for the winter. So spending 6-7 hours a day chopping wood.
Wow.
Okay, that's going to be quite tiring then,
I'd
isn't
love
it?
to have 6 or 7 hours a day to chop up wood.
I had a chap that we were training for 100k. It was his first outing with an England vest on, so we're training really hard. But again, fatigue was a factor, and we were looking at, okay, so what's he doing job-wise? He was working as a gardener at the time, and we realised that at that period he was doing a lot on the mowing, so pushing a lawnmower, and he was pushing a lawnmower 10 miles a day.
Oh wow!
Before he even did his run training.
Yeah.
So there's 50 miles a week pushing a lawnmower on top of his training program. I was like, okay, right, so maybe we don't need to do so much of the kind of easy runs, because you do that. We can just do the quality stuff. Yeah, with the lawnmower, exactly. So it's just appreciating, all the other load and stresses that's going on as well. And therefore, what kind of rest do you need in order to deal with that? And if we come back to the post-ultra, post-race, we thought about, we just need rest and recovery. Well, rest is more than just not training.
Okay.
Yes, we have rest, which is, passive rest, where it's just sleeping, napping, maybe getting a massage that somebody else is doing to you, so passive. But then it's, the active rest. So maybe that is some very easy walks, as we talked about, maybe just active recovery, sitting on the bike, just gently turning your legs over, doing some yoga. It's just movement, but with low stress. That's your kind of active recovery. But then there's all these other types of rest as well. So there's the mental rest and recovery. So, giving your mind that time just to switch off and do nothing. Doing some mindfulness techniques or some meditation techniques if you need to. Sitting and reading a book, whatever that might be. Do you need some sensory rest and recovery? We're doing this on computers now. So much of our life is sensory overload. Do we just need to sensory switch off and have some rest and recovery from that point of things? You as a sort of creative individual, content creator, do you need some creative rest? You're constantly trying to think of things to do, to create, to produce. Do you just need some time where you're not doing that?
Oh, yeah.
And allow yourself just to kind of but it's maybe sort of giving you that time just to relax the brain, and then you actually then come up with more ideas because you've given yourself that rest and recovery from doing it. There's obviously the emotional rest and recovery. So we put a lot of emotion and invest a lot into these events and these races. So we need to recharge that emotional battery as well. So is spending time with your friends, your family, doing other things, recharging that part of your battery. And for some, it might be more kind of spiritual rest and recovery. Is it getting into that community, whether that's meditation, whether that's prayer, whatever it might be. But it's all about that sort of feeding the soul in some way, shape or form. So there's all these different ways you can think about rest and recovery. It's not just not training.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of the key message to maybe get across there.
Yeah, that is super helpful, because when I had the bronchitis, I wasn't doing a lot of running. Obviously, I wasn't doing hardly any running, and then I got to the stage where I wasn't even doing walking very much.
Yeah.
And I just filled that extra time with more work.
Yes.
So I was like,
so then you're
I've
not
got
giving
time to do
yourself
loads more
recovery.
work
It's
now.
not recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not recovery. We've got a live question from Lloyd Watkin, who says he's going to do the Dragon's Back very soon, 8 weeks. He says, best recovery strategies for a multi-day. And he's also got a question about training as well, so we can answer that afterwards. But yes, for a multi-day, like the Dragon's Back, incredible race. 220 odd miles, 6 days, Wales, down the mountain of Spine. The first day is like the whole of the Carnedai, Glidderoo, and also Cribgoch up to Snowdon, and then round probably Lamberris Horseshoe at the same time. It's like that's enough just for one day. Let alone then 5 days after it.
That's it.
It looks amazing.
That's so that's a slightly different sort of recovery topic, I suppose, in a way. But yeah, you're absolutely right. These multi-days, they need a really focused recovery strategy from stage to stage. In many ways, your recovery is starting before you finish that stage. So I think it's thinking about your nutrition in each individual stage. And I think particularly thinking about more fats and protein in your day-to-day nutrition, in your sort of race nutrition for each individual day. I think we can do a lot of these running events, and we think very much about the carbohydrates that we're having on board. So if you've got very used to just doing your runs with maybe just gels or just energy drink, but you're not getting the fats and the proteins, we need to think about introducing more fat and protein into your in-race nutrition to help with that, or minimize the muscle damage, but also help with that recovery almost before you finish each individual stage. So it's thinking about looking at that nutrition strategy. Then it's looking at, obviously, as soon as you cross that line, So Dragon's Back, across the line, obviously you got your tent, you got your kit bag and everything. You got to get straight on it in terms of that recovery. And the first thing is going to be your rehydration. So getting your drinks on board, getting your salts back on board again. So getting some electrolytes back on board. Start eating, as quickly as you can. There's certainly some debate about this whole kind of 15-minute window post-exercise. It's not as strict as that. But certainly you want to be thinking about, I need to be getting something to eat pretty soon. Then it's going to be about dealing with just getting clean and dry. So, looking after your feet. So get your shoes off, get your socks off, get your feet dried off, get them cleaned up, address any hot spots or any blisters that you've picked up. So act on them soon. Be bothered about the bothers. Is always a good motto to follow. And then you can start moving on to getting the rest of your gear sorted, cleaned up, prep for the next day, and then moving on to your sort of the evening meal. I'll be getting compression socks on, compression gear on. Make sure you're not getting any sort of blood pooling in the legs, and leave them on overnight. And then I think the cyclist's motto of why stand when you can sit, why sit when you can lie is a good one to follow. So don't then just be wandering around on your feet. Just get down, either sitting down or lying down, get your feet up and rest hard. Then it's moving on to dinner, making sure you're eating a good high carbohydrate and protein meal that's then going to be digested nice and easy. Maybe sort of limiting the amount of fat you're taking on board just to ease the digestion. You might want to then, if there is, depending on where the camps are, jump in the lake or get some cold water. Just help calm it's more neural recovery. It's not about sort of inflammation or anything like that. It's about just calming that nervous system down, which again will make your legs just feel better. And then, again, your brain's been switched on all day because you're racing, you're concentrating, navigating. So giving yourself that mental rest, just do some mindfulness techniques and meditation, whatever that might be, and then try and get your head down, try and sleep, because obviously sleep is the the biggest recovery tool that we have available to us. Those are the kind of the things. So Dragon's Back, make sure you got your earplugs, make sure you got your eye mask. Because the Thames are probably going to be quite noisy and smelly.
Yeah, and a nose peg for the smells of everyone's feet.
Yeah, exactly.
Lloyd is watching right now, and he says that he has heard the chips are incredible. And Maria says, great advice for multi-day events, #taking notes. And Lloyd has another one. It's not recovery based, but he says he is 8 weeks-ish out from the Dragon's Back. And so he's just wondering what sort of training would you recommend at this point? So he's thinking of more hill intervals to sharpen up his climbing skills.
Dragon's Back is hills and more hills, isn't it? Depends on what his specific needs are. In terms of does it need to be working on some more long steady climbs? Is it getting just the base endurance in at this sort of 8-week block? You're probably starting to shift into more that kind of steady state tempo type climbs rather than high intensity climbs, because you're not going to be doing high intensity on race day. But it might be if there's a skill element to work on in terms of the technical climbs, that might be something to work on, or the technical descending, that might be something to work on. It's really doing a needs analysis for what your individual strengths and limiters are. But if we look at what generally the Dragon's Back is going to involve, it's just getting some good time on feet. And yes, it's thinking about what's the elevation per mile. So looking at, for each individual day, how many feet per mile is that looking like, and trying to replicate that in your own training.
Yeah, cool. Oh, that's great advice. I'm wishing you the best of luck, Lloyd. We'll have to have a chat with you after you've done that one. Lloyd's also done
I'm hoping to get down there at least for one day to see
cool.
people. So I got quite a few sort of friends and athletes racing it. So
Yeah.
I won't be able to get down for the whole thing, but I'm going to try and see if I can negotiate a quick trip away to go and see people. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool. What day were you thinking of?
Honestly, at this stage, I don't know. It all depends on work and shifts and family. But
Yeah.
I should be able to at least get one day where I can escape and drive down to see people.
Yeah, and cheer some people on.
Yeah,
It is a fantastic atmosphere. I've covered it a couple of times on the Thursday, and by that time everyone's pretty battered, and that was the 5-day race. People are walking around the camp like zombies and stuff. It's an awesome place to be. And Lloyd says thanks, Tim. So yeah, he shall see you on the race. And the other question, we've just got time for like one more question that I was going to ask, which is, how many ultras per year should you do if recovery is so important? Is there a sort of a number that we're allowed to do, or like, you know, could Lloyd do Dragon's Back and then follow it up with whatever you're doing in November?
Again, the answer to that is it depends.
Yeah, massive.
So I know that's a cop-out answer.
But how do you find out for yourself? Like I did, for example, I did like 4. I tried to do 4 ultra. I tried to do what's that one? Manx Mountain Marathon, which I failed to do, but went and did it all anyway during the week. Yeah. And then I did the UTS 50k, which was brilliant. And then I did Montane Lakeland 50, which I found easy until the last 10 miles. Then I did Sussex Stride 52, which was more difficult because I had to go at a slower pace with my old teacher. And then I did Arc of Attrition in the January, which I hadn't really trained for, and dropped out of 40 miles, got timed out. And then I did the Coventry Way 40 in April. And then I really didn't want to do the 100k Race of the King. And then I got bronchitis anyway and ended up moving down to the 50 and then moving down to just filming it for them. And I was relieved about that. And I kind of feel like I'm kind of done with ultras for a while. I feel like I maybe did a few too many that year. And then maybe I'll do one in 2026, but just one. But I just get a bit overexcited. I get excited by races and I just sign up to them.
Yeah, but it depends on, you know, when we say ultra marathon, I mean, that's anything over 26. So we usually start at sort of 30 miles.
50k,
but, you know,
kind of thing.
Yeah, but, you know, we could be talking, there's a big difference between doing a 50k and doing, you know, over a 200 miler.
Yes.
You know, you're not going to be doing multiple 200 milers in a year, although some are. Not. You know, if you look at the Triple Crown over in the States, you know, people are doing 3 200 milers in a year. But, you know, on the whole, that wouldn't be a recommended approach. But it depends on, you know, how hard you're pushing these, how deep you go into that well, and how much recovery. You know, if you look at, you know, the road marathon world, you know, people might talk about doing a spring marathon and an autumn marathon, you know, 2 a year. But then you think about other shorter distance races in the interim. You know, within the trail world, again, in some ways, you don't beat yourselves up quite as much as you would do with a road marathon, because there's a bit more variation in terrain, in forces on the body, intensity is just maybe that little bit lower. So again, you're not hurting yourself quite so hard that way. So therefore, you know, you might be able to do multiple, you know, 50Ks, and it's not a particularly challenging. You know, if I was to go and do a 50K, that's just basically a long training run. You know, I could do that most weeks as an easy long training run. As a high intensity race, that's going to take, you know, 3-4 weeks to maybe recover from. Fine. But if that's the longest you've ever done, that's going to take you more to recover from. The more that we do, the better we get at recovering from them. So it really depends on the individual as to how many you can do and how hard you're pushing those races.
It seemed I would say that the more I did, the worse I got at recovering.
Well, then, so it's a question of not then recovering maybe sufficiently from them. You know, there's a chap, Anthony Grindler, who is known as TC, Toyota Crown, long story, but he I'm sure there'll be people listening who know TC. In fact, I know there's people listening to this who know TC. And he will race every weekend, sometimes multiple times in a weekend.
How
and
does
we're
he work
talking,
out the logistics of where to be when with what kit? Like that would
well,
be
he just wears the same stuff in every race.
Okay.
And he just cycles there or runs there.
Yeah.
But the classic, he cycled from was this Norwich to London, ran the London Marathon, and cycled home again, all with a broken pelvis. Just as one example.
Wow.
So there are people that can do this, but he just loves racing, and that is his training. Yeah. So for some people, the races are just their training, and for other people, huge amounts of investment, and therefore you need a lot of recovery afterwards. And like I say, that investment is not only physical, but all the other factors that we've talked about today. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't know how many ultras per year, but possibly 2.
Everybody's going to
really
be different. Everybody will be different.
Yeah. I think, and also for me, it was just like the amount, it was the training, the toll of the training, and like, with Finley getting older and older, and, like him being in nursery, and then me getting another job as well. And, you just can't fit it all in. So, I'm going to do some shorter races and some local races this year, I think. Mm-hmm. Yes. But that's really good recovery. We haven't got any more questions on the live, so I think we're going to let you off, Tim, early today.
It's lunchtime. In fact, the one thing we've not really talked about is obviously nutrition.
I did think about that, and I was like, does he want to answer one more question, or can I see in his eyes he needs his lunch? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I say it's lunchtime, so he's going and refuel and nourish, your body, and but yeah, I think it's making sure that you're eating well after the race, in terms of giving yourself the fats and the proteins to repair your body and regenerate and everything. But you enjoy it as well. So post race it was pizzas, and is maybe kind of seek out the things that you enjoy eating that give you pleasure. Particularly if you have been training really hard for a race and maybe, not been having as many cakes and things like that.
Fish and chips.
Yeah, I've been smashing the Rocky Roads and the brownies and everything else because, exactly, why not? So it's make sure you're nourishing your body, but also your mind as well. Doing these big ultras where, you are stressing yourself. Putting a lot of stress on your guts, for example. We're just eating a lot of very simple sugars, which is not good for your gut biome at all. No. So, having some good pre and probiotic foods post race just to help repair your gut, repair your gut biome. That's all going to help. Again, there's a potential link between obviously your gut, you've got your enteric nervous system, so your gut nervous system, and the link between that and your brain. And if you've got an upset stomach, it's going to give you negative thoughts, emotions within the brain as well, and vice versa. So some of that kind of post-race blues, that depression post-race could potentially be related to the damage that we're causing in our gut. So again, I think really important that you look to really nourish your gut post race with that good pre and probiotic foods.
Yeah, and lots of vegetables.
Lots of vegetables. Lots of fibre. Lots of like I say, get your pre and probiotics on board. So it might be, if you can, with your dairies, getting your live cultures on board. But yeah, get your gut happy again. Eat the nice things, go out for the nice meals, but don't just kind of stick to the boring, simple stuff. You've got to repair your stomach, and enjoy it at the same time. It's nourishment, not just fuel.
Yeah, it's probably worth. It sounds like you might have listened to the same podcast as me. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, he was speaking to Chris Van Tulken, who wrote Ultra Processed People.
Okay,
That's a
right.
really
No, I
good.
haven't listened to it, but know what you mean.
It's good for a long run. It's like 2 hours of them talking about food
Mm.
and ultra processed food, and how you can't just say some food is bad because some of it's processed and some of it's not, like bread and pizza. Some pizza can be
But
really processed, some pizza can be
everything's,
like
yeah,
homemade. But
unless you're pulling it out of the ground and then putting it in your mouth, it's
yeah.
processed.
Oh yeah, exactly. But that's
Cooking
where
is a form of processing.
yeah, that's where the term ultra processed comes from, though, because this is big companies for profit labeling up food that's not really food and putting a load of like gums and stabilizers and emulsifiers in them that we shouldn't really be eating on a regular basis. So yeah, it's really, really interesting podcast, and it sounds like you know a bit about that as well, obviously.
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
Your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, eating good food and listen to that podcast would be one of my recommendations for recovery, because I think it helps you to eat more healthily, because you don't want to put that stuff inside you once you know what it's doing to you. So yeah, that's just my top tip there.
Good. Yeah. And then people are wanting some sort of guidance on that. We've got our Wild Ginger Running training plan store.
Yeah.
So on there are a couple of training plans for after your race, because everybody kind of buys their training plans for up to race day, and then what do you do after that? Where's the guidance?
Yeah.
So there's some sort of 4 and 6 week little training plans on there that you can then use to follow to guide you, and also make sure you don't rush back too quickly. So maybe to hold you back a little bit. So depending on how long you're needing to recover before your next build to a particular race, there's a couple of examples on there that people can use if they wish.
We should have put that in the book, shouldn't we? Like the book.
Well, that can be version 2, can't it?
Yeah, version 2 updated the anti-training plan, the recovery plan. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tim. That has been amazing. And thanks to Snack Sports Nutrition as well for sponsoring the live broadcast and podcast. So I'm looking forward to ordering in those new gels. And if you want to try some too, including the recovery powder, which is very nice, not too sweet, use code WildGingerRunning for 15% off at uk.nac.com. And look for Tim's training plans and recovery plans in the film description and podcast notes below. And just last thing, Tim, how can we follow you and how can we be coached by you and find these training plans, apart from link in the description below?
Best way to follow me is Instagram. As you said, I need to put something up about the race. Haven't done that yet. So Tim Pigott, HP3, which is the coaching company, or you can look on the website hp-3.co.uk.
Awesome. Tim is a great coach, everybody. I highly recommend him. So if you're in need of guidance, then look at his website. Cool. Thank you so much, Tim. It's
good to catch up.
Yeah, always good to chat to you, and goodbye, everyone.
Cheers.